Join me now for my regular Friday panel is broadcaster Craig Foster and New South Wales One Nation leader Tania Mihailuk. Hello to you.
Wow, that was rough. That was very tough.
Here we go.
How long did it take you to write that?
There was a work of art, Craig. We'll get to that later. But look, you're both here. You didn't win the 150 million.
No, I'm so disappointed.
But look, we are going to start with you, Craig.
Again,
we're going to start with you because look, it's been another big week for you. You announced
that important week.
That you are leaving the Republican movement after, of course, co-chair Nova Peris quit over your stance of the Gaza war. Now, she was on Chris Kenny this week. This is what she said.
I was quite disappointed with his commentary and, his reference to mass slaughter of innocent Palestinians. We should be upholding truth and we should be upholding objective dialogue rather than smear tactics and inaccurate language around genocide and apartheid.
So, a big week, Craig.
Yeah, an important one.
Set back the Republican movement?
I tell you what, I love the fact that you've showed those comments there because I completely agree. And as I've said in the last few days, I wish Nova all the best. I support her as a person. I got to know her throughout working together as co-chairs. But what she said there is really, really important. That's why I say it's been a really important week. Because what she said was that we need objective dialogue on genocide and apartheid. And that's exactly my point. That's exactly what I've been speaking about in the last week. And objective dialogue means that we have to talk about international law, about humanitarian law, and about human rights. That's exactly the point. So I'm in complete agreement. So let's do that as a country. And one thing that's, I think, really challenging the whole country, there's a lot of confusion and people are scared to speak out because they're labelled, they are attacked, and they're silenced. And I don't agree with that. I don't think your viewers agree with that. I mean, you guys here, I know, are the great champions of freedom of speech, right? I hear you guys talking about it all the time, and every single one of your viewers, I think, is a fair-minded Australian who wants to see equal treatment for everyone and who doesn't want people silenced and attacked and labelled. And that's what Australia should stand for. And what we're seeing at the moment is we're watching on our TV screens, these horrible images coming out of, children and hospitals being attacked and, women and children. Like there's 17,000 children who've been killed. And we're being told that we shouldn't speak about it. And if we do speak about it, then we're attacked viciously. And I don't think that Australians accept that any longer. I don't accept it. So I've said that we need to push back against that and we need to speak out. And international law is the only objective issue here. Now, we can all have opinions, and there's a whole range of opinions. That's the point. Everyone is entitled to our opinion.
Of course.
But the one objective level here is international law, humanitarian law, and human rights. That's where I stand. So I'm not against
what about
or
the Republican movement?
So I'm not against or for either side. What I am for is Australia standing up strong and proud as an independent country and saying, we want to treat every single country exactly the same. We are a country of fair people, and let's apply international law objectively. And you talk about Albo there.
I want to ask you, though, I mean, have you set back the Republican movement now?
What we demonstrated in the last couple of days, which is really important, is that we can have respectful conversations, and that's why I'm here talking to you tonight.
But
I've said many times.
Has it set back the movement now?
Actually, it's put it forward, because what we've demonstrated to Australia is that we can disagree respectfully and have difficult conversations in the public domain, and that's what republicanism is about.
The two co-chairs have quit in the spate of a few days.
Okay, so what that means is that the organisation is in a position where I can speak about this freely, which is what I need, and the organisation deserves someone in that position who is fully focused on only the Republican movement, which I can't be at the moment.
Were you forced to quit?
No, actually, as I put in a statement in the last couple of days, I've been speaking to the CEO, who's a brilliant person, Isaac Jeffrey. Actually used to be, I think, Chief of Staff of Michael McCormack in the Nationals. And I know he's a big viewer of Sky News. And so I've been talking to him for several months about this fact, that I need to speak about a range of these issues.
Okay.
You know, I am a human rights advocate, and therefore he's been preparing for quite a period of time.
All right.
So they're in a brilliant position.
Yeah.
But so am I, and so are we.
Okay.
And that's what we need to do, is exactly what you heard before.
Yeah.
I've got to say, Craig, I think most people see it really differently this week. I think what Nova has successfully been able to do this week is probably knock you out and knock out the Republican movement in the same hit. I mean, really, this is a huge blow for the movement to lose 2 co-chairs in a week. I don't know what you've just said.
Actually, it's not.
A lot of spin.
Well, no,
but the reality is, it's a huge blow.
We've been preparing for this for a period of time.
Blow.
And what's happened is, what we've demonstrated is that every single viewer should be able to have our own view publicly, and that we shouldn't be cancelled. And no one has cancelled anyone in this situation.
The amount of celebrities
and
now that'll tie themselves to the Republican
we are allowed to
fit in a shoebox, okay? It's a huge...
And that's exactly the point. What's happening is everyone is being put into a box and is being labelled and attacked. We haven't attacked anyone. What we've said is Australia needs to talk about what's happening in Israel, Gaza, and we need to talk about it truthfully, objectively, and we need to talk about genocide and apartheid without attacking each other.
Let's move on. I mean, it's an interesting one, and I'll be very curious to see where the Republican movement lands.
Well, I mean, when Charles gets out here later in the year, it's going to be huge fun. So I'm hoping we're going to talk about that a lot on here as well.
Brace yourself, prepare yourself for that. But look, let's move on, because I want to talk about, I spoke before about how the Prime Minister's marked 2 years in office. He's told an event in Western Sydney that he feels their pain. Tania, 2 years in office now, do you think that Albanese has in fact grasped the cost of living crisis? Does he understand?
Well, listening to him today talk about his life story of struggle, it was so condescending, I think, for a Prime Minister to suggest that he can relate to how people are feeling with cost of living right now. It's appalling. I have to say, he's somebody, not only is he in the position of Prime Minister and doing well, he's also been in public office now for almost 30 years. This is his 28th year as a parliamentarian. Struggle Street is like a fleeting memory for him. He wouldn't remember his past experiences. He's been doing well for decades now. And in fact, he'll end up with a generous pension when he's done as well, okay? Because he's under the old scheme, and indeed he'll close as a Prime Minister. Can I just say, it's also important to remember this is all about him just resetting his image. I think that he's had internal polling given to him by the Labor Party showing him that there are problems, and of course there are problems, okay? We know this. He's trying to reset his image because he was the architect of the failed Voice campaign. He's presided over many interest rate hikes. He's presided over immigration levels, record immigration levels, and he's presided over these horrific cost of living pressures that he has not responded to efficiently in this country. And I think that's what this speech is about, him trying to reset in preparation for an election down the track. And the idea that you can try and suggest that you can relate to people when you long have, been living well for many, many decades. It's appalling.
He's living in the lodge.
I actually think it'll backfire. It'll backfire his comments.
Okay, well, but interesting. Craig, you were quite. You didn't like my editorial tonight, by the sound.
I didn't say I didn't like it.
Okay, so then let me ask you. The PM pledged on the night he was elected, that it would be a better future for all Australians. Do you think that Australia is better under Anthony Albanese?
No, so I was quite impressed by the work you put into it and how detailed it was, right? So the thing is, like all Prime Ministers, all long-term parliamentarians, and most Prime Ministers have been long-term parliamentarians, all of them, I think it's always...
Not as long as Anthony Albanese.
Okay, so I think it's difficult for all of them to really understand what cost of living pressures are. So I think, what Tania's saying is right, but I don't think that's unique to Anthony Albanese. I think, and what he's saying is exactly what they all try to say. So there's nothing new there. They all try to relate to average Australian. I mean, what ScoMo used to do, for example, was to go to all the sporting things, right? And, he would go into the change room down at the Sharkies and all that stuff. And Albo wears his, Rabbitohs hat and what they're trying to say to Australians is, I'm with you, I understand you. So that's perfectly normal. The question is, around whether his policies have been effective, and I've got to say that there are a whole range of challenges that I don't think he was responsible for, but I also have been disappointed in many of the responses that he has done. I think he needed to show more courage in a lot of areas, and you know, he talked in his opening speech about a courageous Australia, you know, and I don't think he's been courageous enough. And I say that also in relation to what we spoke about earlier, Israel-Gaza.
Sure.
I don't think he's been courageous enough about that in taking leadership and holding firm to international law. So I think he's got a lot of work to do, and you see the rise of you know, kind of progressives and independents, and I think that's what he's responding to, and he's realising that I have a very serious challenge here coming into the next election. It's not only just the coalition, which used to happen, and so people are mobilising.
Yeah,
so
good point.
Yeah, I
exactly.
think he needs to respond.
Well, look, I mean, we're waiting for that election to be called. We don't know this year, next year. That's Tania's pick.